The frozen stranger in the snow. The snowstorm had covered everything in white. The wind howled like a hungry beast. It was the third night, and she had no more strength to walk. Her thin feet dragged across the frozen ground, every step slow and painful. She had no name here, no ID, no place to go. Just an alien woman with strange purple skin, wearing torn cloth that barely covered her shivering body. Her long black hair stuck to her wet face. Her lips were blue. Her eyes were wide with fear and hunger. She had escaped the transport crate 3 days ago, jumped out when the ship landed near the human colony. She thought someone might help, but no one even opened the door. The first night, she had knocked on 5 homes. Some had lights on. Some had children laughing inside. But when she knocked, the laughter stopped. Lights went off. Doors stayed shut. She slept behind a wooden crate near a mechanic's shop. She found a dirty tarp and wrapped it around herself. It did little. The cold bit her skin like knives. The second night, she burned a small bag she carried just to keep warm. The fire was weak. The smoke stung her eyes. Her stomach growled, but she had nothing left. Now, on the third night, she stood again in front of the same house. It was small, made of metal and wood. A soft light came from inside the window. She saw a shadow move. She raised a trembling hand and knocked, once, twice. Then she leaned against the door, whispering, "Please." But the door did not open. Inside the house, a man sat by the fire. His name was Grant. He was a mechanic, alone working late. He thought he heard something, maybe wind, maybe a knock. He looked at the door, then shook his head. "Just the storm," he muttered, and turned back to his tool bench. Outside, the alien girl sank to her knees. The snow soaked her clothes. Her fingers were going numb. She took a deep breath and crawled back behind the crate. Her skin was turning pale. She could no longer feel her toes. "I just need to stay alive till morning," she whispered, teeth chattering. One more night. The wind grew louder. Snow piled on her back. She curled up, tight, and tried to sleep, but sleep didn't come, only fear and pain. She started whispering to herself in her native tongue, stories her mother told her, the warmth of her planet, her baby sister's laughter. All gone now. A patrol drone flew overhead. Its scanner light blinked once, then moved on. She didn't show up on their system. No one registered her. That made her invisible. In the house, Grant finally stood up. He walked to the window and looked outside. The storm made it hard to see, but something was there. He frowned and grabbed a flashlight. When he opened the door, the wind hit him like a wall. He raised the light and looked around. Nothing. Just snow, trash bins, and shadows. He almost closed the door, but then something caught his eye. Behind the crate, a hand. Small. Still. He stepped outside quickly, pushing through the snow. The figure was curled up, almost buried. He reached out and touched her arm. It was ice. "Damn it," he said softly. "You again?" She opened her eyes weakly. Just a little. Her lips moved, but no sound came. She looked up at him with the last of her strength. He didn't know why he hadn't helped before. Maybe fear. Maybe mistrust. Maybe he thought someone else would, but now she looked like death itself. No one else was coming. Grant picked her up. She weighed almost nothing, just bones and ice and cold skin. Her head dropped against his chest. He brought her inside and laid her near the fire. He wrapped her in a thick blanket. Her eyes fluttered, but stayed half closed. He touched her face gently. "You need to survive this. Do you hear me?" She didn't reply. But her breath was still there, faint, weak. Grant stood over her, heart pounding. He didn't know who she was. He didn't know what she wanted. But he knew one thing now. She had knocked. And this time, he answered. Rayla opened her eyes slowly. Heat, soft blanket, fire crackling near her. For a moment she thought she was dreaming. But then the pain returned. Her fingers were stiff and burned. Her skin was red, her body shaking under the thick blanket. The warmth hurt her, but she welcomed it. It meant she was still alive. She turned, her head slightly. The human was there, sitting on a chair watching her with tired eyes. He hadn't slept. "You're awake," he said softly. She didn't answer. Her throat felt dry like sand. She tried to speak, but only a soft hiss came out. The man stood up, walked to the kitchen, and returned with a small cup. "Drink, slowly." He helped her sit up a little. She drank, her hands shaking badly. The water tasted like life. "I'm Grant," he said, kneeling beside her. "You've been outside for 3 nights. You're lucky to be breathing." Still, she said nothing, but her eyes held pain. And something else. Fear. He nodded slowly. "You don't trust me. I get it." He stood and went back to his tools. He didn't ask questions, he just let her rest. That night the wind howled again. The storm had not passed. It had only grown worse. Outside, the colony was frozen in silence. Lights were off. No one stepped outside. Inside, Rayla sat near the fire, her blanket wrapped tight. She watched the flames and remembered her home, her planet's sun, warm and golden. She missed it. So much it hurt. She whispered something in her alien tongue, a lullaby, a memory. Grant looked over. "What was that?" She stopped. He raised his hands. "Sorry, just sounded beautiful." Silence returned. She was hungry. Her stomach growled. She held it, ashamed. Grant stood again and went to the cupboard. He opened a can of soup, heated it on the small stove, and brought it to her. "You need food," he said. "Don't worry, it's safe." She stared at it, then slowly reached for the spoon. Her hands were shaking too much. She dropped it. He quietly picked it up and offered it to her again. This time she used both hands. She took a small bite, then another. Her eyes closed. It felt like hope. After the meal, she tried to stand. Her legs gave out. Grant rushed forward and caught her. "Whoa, easy. You're not ready." She looked up at him, confused. "Why?" she whispered. Her voice was weak, but clear now. "Why what?" he asked. "Why? Help me?" He looked at her, really looked. Her skin was purple, her eyes golden. She was not human, not from this world. But she was afraid, and freezing, and alone. "You knocked," he said finally. "That's enough." She said nothing more. That night, Grant placed a small mattress by the fire. He gave her extra blankets, a pillow. She slept deeply for the first time in many nights, but while she rested outside the house, someone watched. A neighbor across the road had seen Grant carry her inside. He narrowed his eyes. "Illegal alien," he muttered. "Should have left her in the snow." He picked up a small comm device and made a call. "Patrol?" "Yeah, I think someone's hiding an outsider." Inside, Rayla woke with a start. Something in her bones warned her. She sat up and looked toward the window. Snowflakes danced in the wind. But there was something else. A shadow. She quietly stood, using the wall for support, and walked to the window. Nothing. Still, her heart beat fast. She had survived 3 nights in the storm, but now something colder was coming, and it wasn't the weather. The 3rd night came with silence. No more howling winds, no more falling snow, just cold, deep, biting cold that crept into every crack, every shadow, every breath. Rayla sat alone by the fire in Grant's small cabin. The blanket wrapped around her shoulders had grown thin. She had stopped shaking, but she knew what that meant. Her body wasn't warm. It was numb, too numb. She stood up, her feet still weak, and walked slowly to the window. Outside, the colony was quiet, covered in snow, no lights in the houses nearby. The human world seemed frozen in time. Grant had gone out earlier to fix a fuel pump at the far end of the station. He promised to be back before nightfall, but night had come, and Grant hadn't returned. She looked around the room. The firewood was nearly gone. The fire was dying. She knelt in front of it, feeding it the last small pieces. They flared for a moment, then dimmed. Her eyes went to the cupboard. Empty. She checked drawers. Nothing. She walked over to the coat rack, only his old work jacket. Then she looked down at herself. She was wearing a blanket, and underneath the last of her clothes, a thin outer layer and a cloth shirt she had saved from her homeworld. Her hands trembled. She pulled off the outer layer. It was soaked, stiff from the snow. Still, she brought it to the fire and held it there. The flames grabbed it eagerly. She held her breath as the heat returned for a brief second. The fire crackled. She added her sleeves next. Tears rolled down her face. These were the last pieces she owned from her family. But fire meant life. She whispered her sister's name as the fabric turned to ash. Grant had given her food, warmth and safety, but now he was gone. She didn't know if he would return. She didn't even know if he was still alive. Her heart felt heavy. She heard a noise outside. Her head snapped toward the door. Footsteps. She pulled the blanket tight around her and stepped back. The door opened, but it wasn't Grant. Two men in black, patrol uniforms, stepped inside, snow trailing behind them. Their helmets were cold and expressionless. One of them held up a scanner. "Unauthorized life form detected," he said in a flat voice. She froze. The other stepped forward and grabbed her arm. "Come quietly." She shook her head. "Please, I didn't steal, I didn't harm anyone, they didn't care. You're not registered, you are trespassing in human territory, that is a violation of—" But a voice cut in sharply. "Let her go." It was Grant. He stood in the doorway, his face angry, wet with melting snow. "She's under my protection," he said. She knocked, I answered. "You got a problem with that?" The officers looked at each other. "She's not human." One said. "And I'm not heartless," Grant replied. "Now get out of my house." One of the officers reached for a comm. "We'll report this. You'll be fined, maybe worse." "Go ahead," Grant said, stepping between them and Rayla. "But you won't take her." The officers paused. Then they turned, walking out into the night. Grant closed the door and locked it. He turned back, looked at Rayla, who was still standing there clutching the blanket. His eyes fell to the ashes in the fire. "Did you—" She nodded. Her lips trembled. "I had nothing left to burn," she whispered. "I had to live." Grant looked at her. Really looked. She was just a girl. Alone. Afraid. And still trying to survive. He walked to a drawer and pulled out an old coat. Big, warm, patched up. "Here," he said. "Wear this." She took it with both hands, pressing her face into the fabric. It smelled of oil, of work, of safety, and for the first time, of family. Outside, snow kept falling, but inside, a fire, burned strong again. Grant couldn't sleep that night, even after the patrol left, even after locking every door and window. Something inside him stayed awake, burning like the fire in his small cabin. Rayla was asleep on the floor mat, curled, tightly under the thick coat he'd given her. Her breathing was slow but steady now. He sat on the edge of the table, watching her. He didn't understand what had come over him. He wasn't the kind of man who trusted strangers. And yet, he had opened his door to her. A freezing alien, a woman he didn't even know. She had said almost nothing. But the pain in her eyes had spoken louder than words. It wasn't just cold that had broken her. It was loneliness, rejection, and fear. The same look he had seen once in the mirror. Years ago. The snow outside had finally stopped. The land was quiet. Even the wind was resting. Grant stood up slowly and picked up a folded blanket. He walked over to her side and gently laid it across her. She didn't wake, but her hands moved slightly, clutching the coat tighter, as if afraid it might vanish. He whispered, "You're safe now." And for the first time in a long while, he meant it. Morning came softly, the sunlight bouncing off the white snow. The warmth from the fire still flickered in the corner of the cabin. Rayla sat up slowly. Her hair was messy, her face still pale, but her eyes looked brighter. Grant handed her a cup of tea. "It's not fancy, but it'll help." She took it gently. "Thank you." They sat in silence for a while, just two souls breathing in the calm after the storm. Then Rayla spoke. "My people. We were hunted," she said, voice low. "Some called us cursed. Others wanted us gone. I escaped in a supply crate. When I landed here, I thought maybe humans would be different." She looked down. "But I was wrong. I knocked on doors. They turned off their lights, pretended they didn't hear me." Grant sighed. "People are scared. And when they're scared, they choose silence." "But you opened the door," she whispered. He didn't reply, just stared into his cup. Outside, a loud bang echoed down the snowy street. Rayla tensed. Grant stood up quickly and looked out the window. 2 patrol vehicles had stopped at the corner. Uniformed men stepped out, speaking to a neighbor. "Stay here," Grant said firmly. Rayla's eyes filled with panic. "They came back," he nodded. "And I'll deal with it." Before she could speak, he picked up his jacket, pulled on his boots, and stepped outside into the cold. The officer from last night stood tall. "We've been ordered to confirm the report." "She's gone," Grant lied. "Left before sunrise. Couldn't stop her." The officer narrowed his eyes. "You didn't report it." "Didn't have to. She didn't hurt anyone." "Harboring an unregistered alien is a violation." "Harboring?" Grant cut in. "I gave someone warmth. A fire, a coat, that's not a crime, that's called being human." The officer stepped closer. "If she's still inside, we'll find her." Grant didn't flinch. "You'll need a search order." The officer paused, then stepped back. "This isn't over." Grant watched as they returned to their vehicles and drove off. When he came, back inside, Rayla was sitting with her hands clenched tightly. "They'll come back," she said. He nodded. "Maybe. But they'll need more than cold hearts to break this door down." She stood slowly, walked toward him. "I want to leave," she said quietly. "I don't want to cause trouble for you." "You didn't," Grant said. "They did." She looked at the fire, then back at him. "Why are you helping me?" He paused, then finally said, "Because someone should have helped me once, and no one did." A tear slipped down her cheek. She stepped forward and wrapped her arms around him. It was a small hug, weak, but full of gratitude. He placed a hand on her back. The door had been opened, but something else had opened too. A bond, a promise. And this time, neither the snow nor the law could close it. Rayla hadn't felt safe in years, but now, sitting on a thick rug beside the fire, sipping warm broth from a wooden bowl, something in her chest began to soften. It wasn't just the food or the warmth, it was the silence. No shouting, no guards, no cages, just quiet. She looked around Grant's small home. It wasn't fancy, just one room with rusty tools hanging on the wall and an old sofa pushed against the far side. But to her, it felt like a castle. Grant had gone outside again to fix a fuel line at a neighbor's house. He told her to lock the door behind him and only open it for him. She did as he asked, but even locked doors didn't erase the fear. Rayla stood slowly and walked to the tiny bathroom. She stared into the mirror above the cracked sink. Her reflection stared back, sunken cheeks, wild black hair, eyes too old for her young face. Her hands reached to the edge of her neck. She touched the small marks, faded scars in a strange pattern, symbols. She quickly pulled the collar of her shirt higher. Even she hated to see them. They were reminders of what she had been, not just a refugee, but something else, something dangerous. Later, Grant returned. He brought bread, a fruit bar, and a strange root she had never seen. "Try this," he said. "Locals eat it raw. Don't worry, it won't kill you." She took it gently, smiled for the first time, and bit into it. Her eyes widened. "It's unsweet," Grant chuckled. "Yeah, it tricks you. Looks like a rock. Tastes like honey." They sat together at the table. The silence wasn't heavy anymore. It was calm, safe. That night, a quiet knock came at the door. Rayla stiffened. Grant motioned for her to stay back and walked to the door. He opened it just a crack. An older man stood outside. His neighbor, Mr. Hollins. A kind face but cautious eyes. "I saw patrols outside your place yesterday," the man said. Grant nodded slowly. "They were looking for someone. She's gone." Mr. Hollins glanced past him, squinting. "I didn't see her leave." Grant stepped out onto the porch and pulled the door shut behind him. She was freezing. "She's not a criminal." "They'll come back, Grant," the man warned. "This colony don't want trouble." "I'm not causing trouble," Grant replied. "I'm saving a life." Mr. Hollins sighed. "You've always had a big heart. Just be careful who you open it to." Then he walked off into the snow. Grant returned inside, shaking the cold from his shoulders. Rayla stood by the window watching him. "More people will come," she said. "They'll ask questions." "Let them," he replied. "You're staying." She looked at him almost in disbelief. Then she took a breath. "There's something you need to know." He raised an eyebrow. "Go ahead." "I wasn't just running from cold," she said slowly. "I was running from people who wanted to use me, for what I am." "What are you?" he asked gently. She pulled her sleeve up and showed the faint symbols etched into her arm. "I was part of an experiment. A group designed to survive cold. Planets, I was modified." Grant stared at the symbols. "Modified? We were trained, changed. Our bodies, adapted. But we were still seen as property." Grant stayed silent, letting her speak. "I escaped," she continued. "But they're looking for me. I thought no one would help me once they found out what I was." He leaned back, arms crossed. "You're not a tool. You're not a test subject." "You really believe that?" He nodded. "I believe you're a person, and you're under my roof now. That's all that matters." She blinked fast, her throat tight. He smiled. "You're not a guest anymore, Rayla." She looked at him. "What am I then?" He paused. "You're family now." Her breath caught. Family. That word had died on her tongue long ago. But tonight, in a strange world, it was reborn. Rayla couldn't sleep that night. She sat near the fire, staring into the dancing flames as memories surfaced, sharp, unwanted, and cold like the snow outside. She had hoped to forget them, but now that Grant knew a piece of her, truth, the rest weighed even heavier. She turned her head. Grant was fast asleep on the old sofa, wrapped in a blanket, boots still on, one hand resting on a half-finished tool. She smiled weakly. He had done so much and yet asked for nothing. Her hands traced the faint symbols burned into her arms. She could still hear the voices from the lab. Cold-resistant, stronger lungs, night vision. Let's increase neural stress response. They called her and the others subjects. Never by name. They tested her limits, dropped her into freezing rooms, made her crawl through ice tunnels. Shocked her if she slowed down. When the funding ran out, the project was shut down. The others were discarded, sold, hunted, or worse. Rayla escaped, and she had been running ever since. The next morning, Grant rose early. He saw her by the fire. "Wide awake. You didn't sleep," he said. She shook her head. "I wanted to forget, but I couldn't." He walked over and poured 2 cups of tea. "Then maybe it's time you told me everything." She hesitated, then nodded. "I was born in the North Labs of Vexar Prime," she began. "My mother was one of the first carriers. They made her believe it was for peace, that we'd help colonize frozen planets and bring food and hope to new worlds. But it wasn't about peace, it was control. The scientists didn't want helpers, they wanted weapons that could survive where others died. Grant listened quietly. They trained us like soldiers, but we were only children. When we cried, they punished us. When we asked questions, they silenced us. Her eyes glistened. I still hear the screams. Some didn't make it. She pulled up her sleeve again. The marks on her arm weren't just scars. They were proof. Proof of ownership. Proof of survival. Grant took a slow breath. You weren't meant to be anyone's property. They don't think so, she replied. They believe I still belong to them. You escaped, he said. They have no claim anymore. But they're searching, she whispered, even here. Just then a loud knock hit the door. They both froze. Grant stood and moved to the door slowly. Who is it? He called. Woman's voice replied, I'm from the Border Health Office, just checking on all homes after the snowstorm. May I come in? Grant opened the door slightly. A tall alien woman in a clean blue uniform stood outside. Her badge looked official. Her smile was sharp. I won't take much of your time, she said. Sure, Grant muttered. Come in. Rayla had stepped out of view, standing quietly. Behind the curtain to the side, the woman walked around slowly, eyes scanning the room. Any visitors during the storm? She asked casually. No, Grant lied. Just me and a lot of frozen pipes. She chuckled. I bet. She turned her head suddenly toward the curtain. Rayla's heart stopped, but Grant stepped between them. Need anything else? The woman paused, then gave a cold smile. No, that'll be all. Stay safe. She left. The moment the door closed, Grant turned to Rayla. She knew. Rayla nodded. She's not from Health Patrol, she's from them. We need to be ready, he said. They'll come back. Rayla looked down. You can still turn me in. Save yourself. Grant shook his head. I didn't. Open that door to close it now. You're not alone anymore. She looked at him, her voice barely a whisper. They won't stop. Then we won't either, he said. Outside, far down the street, the woman in the blue uniform tapped her. Comm confirmed. Target is inside the mechanic's home. She hasn't burned yet. Orders? A voice replied. Wait. Let her think she's safe. The longer she stays, the easier it will be to catch her. She looked back at the small house one last time. And when we come, she added coldly, he'll regret ever opening that door. The air was still. Too still. Grant felt it the moment he stepped out that morning. No sounds, no birds, no wind, just a heavy silence that settled like a warning in his bones. Inside, Rayla was packing quietly. She knew what was coming. Her hands moved fast, but her heart was slow, heavy. There weren't many things to take, just the coat he gave her, a blanket, and a packet of dried fruit he left for her. She didn't want to leave, but she couldn't risk his life. Grant stepped back, inside, and looked at her. You don't have to go, he said. She turned. They'll kill you if I stay. Let them try, he answered. No, she said, stepping forward. You don't understand what they'll do. They don't just take people like me. They erase anyone who helps us. No one will remember. You were even here. He stayed silent. She placed the small pack on the table and faced him. Thank you, she whispered, for opening the door, for seeing me, for everything. He stepped closer. You're not leaving. Grant, you said they made you to survive the cold, right? She nodded. But they didn't take away your heart. And that's the strongest part of you. Her lips trembled. I opened the door, he said, voice low but firm. Now I'll stand in front of it. Just then, tires crunched the snow outside. Engines hummed, doors slammed. The patrol had returned. More of them this time. 6 men in black armor, and the woman in the blue coat stood in front of them, her eyes like knives. Grant stepped outside before they could reach the door. The leader raised a scanner. Subject R93, surrender her now. Grant didn't move. She's not property, he said. She's stolen government material, the woman snapped. She belongs to us. She belongs to no one, he said. She's free. Behind him, Rayla stepped out onto the porch. Her arms were bare, scars visible. Her golden eyes stared straight ahead. I'm not hiding, she said. Then this ends now, the leader said, stepping forward. Grant held out his arm. No one's taking her, he said. Not while I'm breathing. A soldier raised a shock baton. Another lifted a tranquilizer gun. But then something happened. No one expected. Doors began to open down the street. One by one, humans stepped out. Neighbors, shopkeepers, children, people who had watched quietly. Now they stood silently behind Grant. One man raised his voice. You touch him, you touch all of us. The woman in blue stiffened. This is a violation of colony law, she snapped. No, said Mr. Holland, stepping forward. This is a correction of it. You're all going to pay for this. Rayla stepped forward. No, you are. The soldiers hesitated. Too many witnesses, too much resistance. Too late, the patrol stood down. The woman gave Grant one last look. We'll remember this, she said coldly. You just made yourself a target. Then shoot your gun, Grant replied, but you're not touching her. She turned and walked away. The others followed. The vehicles pulled out, disappearing into the snow once more. Later, Rayla sat beside the fire again. Grant poured her another cup of tea. They'll come back, she said. He nodded. Then we'll be ready. She looked at the coat in her lap, then at him. Back home, she whispered. They said humans were cruel. He raised an eyebrow. Some are. She smiled. But not all. No, he said, smiling back. Some open doors. She leaned her head on his shoulder. Outside, the snow began to melt, and inside, something warmer than fire had taken root. A bond, a promise, and this time, it would last.